My name's Robin, and I had just celebrated my 26th birthday a few weeks ago. Life was good. I was engaged to Jake, my college sweetheart, and our wedding was right around the corner. Everything seemed perfect until my mom decided to throw a wrench in the works. I was lounging on the couch, flipping through a bridal magazine when my phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I answered with a cheerful, "Hey, Mom, what's up?" "Robin, honey, I need your opinion," she said, her voice laced with excitement. "What kind of suit do you think would look best on Tom when he walks you down the aisle?" "I'm thinking maybe blue, but maybe black is more traditional?" I blinked, confused. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Grandpa's walking me down the aisle." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, "What?" "No, Tom's doing it. He's got a teenage daughter, and he wants to practice. You know, to get a feel for when it's her turn." I sat up straight, my magazine forgotten. "Practice?" "Mom, I'm not some dress rehearsal for your boyfriend's future father of the bride moment. Grandpa's walking me down the aisle, end of story." "But Tom." "I don't care about Tom," I shouted, surprising myself with the intensity of my anger. "I'm not going to be his guinea pig. If he wants to practice so badly, tell him to find some other wedding to crash." "Robin Elizabeth Carter, you listen to me." I hung up. The phone immediately started ringing again, but I ignored it, tossing it aside as if it had burned me. As I sat there, my heart pounding, memories started flooding back. Dad's face, his warm smile, the way he used to swing me around in the backyard. He'd died when I was 10, leaving a gaping hole in our lives that Mom had desperately tried to fill. I remembered the parade of men that followed, all truckers from the transportation company where Mom worked. She'd bring them home, introducing each one as the one, her future husband, my future stepfather. But they never lasted long. Mom was intense, clingy. She'd scare them off, and then the next one would appear, another Mr. Right in a never-ending cycle. As I sat there, lost in memories, I couldn't help but remember how I'd sought refuge with my grandparents during those tumultuous years. They were my safe haven, a stark contrast to the chaos at home. I was about 13 when things really started to get out of hand. One day, I came home from school to find Mom in a screaming match with some woman I'd never seen before. "You home-wrecking bitch," the stranger shrieked, her face red with fury. "That's my husband." Mom, never one to back down, fired right back. "He told me he was single. Don't blame me for your marital problems." And there, lounging in our ratty armchair, was Mom's latest boyfriend. I think his name was Dave or Dan, I honestly couldn't keep track anymore. He was watching the two women fight with a smug grin on his face, like it was some kind of twisted entertainment. I stood frozen in the doorway, my backpack slipping off my shoulder. "Mom?" I called out weakly. Both women whirled to face me. The stranger's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Is this your daughter?" she spat at Mom. "Does she know what kind of woman her mother is?" "Leave her out of this," Mom yelled back. Dave Ordand finally stood up. Ladies, he drawled. "No need to fight. There's plenty of me to go around." The stranger let out a strangled scream and lunged at him. I took that as my cue to bolt, locking myself in my room until the shouting stopped. That night, I heard Mom crying through the thin walls of our apartment. Dave Ordan had left with his wife, and Mom was alone again. As I grew older, things didn't get better. By the time I was 15, I was doing everything I could to avoid being home. It wasn't just the revolving door of Mom's boyfriends anymore, it was the way they looked at me. I remember one guy, Rick, eyeing me up and down as I grabbed a snack from the kitchen. "Your girl's filling out nicely," he told Mom. Mom just laughed. "She takes after me," she said proudly, completely oblivious to how uncomfortable I was. I started spending more time at the library, at friends' houses, anywhere but home. But Mom didn't get it. She'd call me selfish for not wanting to hang out with her and her latest flame. "Robin, honey," she said one day, "come meet Jeff. He's great with kids." We could be such a happy family, the three of us. I looked at Jeff, saw the way his eyes roved over me, and felt sick. No thanks, I muttered, retreating to my room. That night, I called my grandpa. Can I come stay with you for a while? I asked, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. Of course, sweet pea, he said without hesitation. You're always welcome here. It didn't take long for my grandparents to notice something was wrong. One evening, as we sat around their kitchen table, the words just tumbled out of me. I told them everything, the parade of men, the uncomfortable stares, Mom's obliviousness to it all. By the time I finished, Grandma had tears in her eyes, and Grandpa's face was set in a hard line I'd never seen before. That's enough, he said, his voice low and firm. We're putting a stop to this right now. The next day, we drove to Mom's place. Grandpa didn't waste any time. Carol, what you're doing is immoral and dangerous. You're bringing strange men into your home with a young girl present. Do you have any idea what could happen? Mom's face flushed red. How dare you, she shrieked. You've never wanted me to be happy. You're trying to ruin my life. Your life? Grandpa shot back. What about Robin's life? What about her safety? Robin's fine, Mom insisted. She's just being dramatic. So what, you're going to take her away from me, is that it? Grandpa nodded. Robin's coming to live with us. You can sort out your personal life without putting her at risk. Fine, Mom spat. Take her. It'll be easier to find a good man without a teenager cramping my style anyway. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd known, deep down, that Mom saw me as a burden sometimes, but hearing her say it out loud, it hurt more than I'd expected. Grandma squeezed my shoulder. Go pack your things, sweetie, she said softly. I nodded, heading to my room in a daze. As I threw clothes into a duffel bag, I could hear Mom and Grandpa still arguing in the living room. When I came back out, Mom was standing by the door, arms crossed. So this is it, huh, she said. You're choosing them over me? I looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time. She seemed smaller somehow, more fragile. For a moment, I saw the scared, lonely woman behind the brash exterior. I'm choosing me, Mom, I said quietly. I hope someday you'll understand that. She didn't answer, just turned away as I walked out the door with my grandparents. As we drove away, I watched my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, I felt safe. Living with my grandparents was like stepping into a different world. Gone were the late-night arguments, the parade of strange men, and the constant tension. Instead, I found myself surrounded by love, stability, and support. I still went to the same school, saw the same friends. But everything felt different, better. I could focus on my studies without worrying about what, or who, I'd find when I got home. Mom was Mom. She'd call occasionally, usually to talk about her latest boyfriend or to complain about work. She rarely asked about me, and when she did, she didn't seem to really listen to the answers. When graduation day rolled around, I was surprised to see her there. She sat with my grandparents, looking uncomfortable and out of place. You look nice, honey, she said after the ceremony, giving me a quick hug. Listen, I've got to run. I've got a date with this great guy I met at work. You understand, right? And just like that, she was gone. I watched her rush off, feeling a mixture of hurt and relief. My grandparents helped me move into my dorm room that fall, setting me up with everything I needed for college. I'd decided to study to become an investment manager, fascinated by the world of finance and planning. That's where I met Jake. We were in the same introduction to financial markets class, both of us bright-eyed freshmen with big dreams. We became friends first, study buddies who'd quiz each other late into the night at the campus coffee shop. It wasn't until our senior year that things shifted. We were working on a group project, hunched over spreadsheets in the library, when Jake suddenly looked up at me. Robin, he said, his voice serious. I think I'm in love with you." I blinked at him, surprised. And then I realized I felt the same way. Our relationship blossomed quickly after that. Jake was kind, smart, and stable, everything I'd never had in my life with Mom. When he proposed after graduation, I didn't hesitate to say yes. I saw Mom a few times during those years, usually when I'd stop by her place during breaks. Her new boyfriend, Tom, was always there, younger than her, with slicked back hair and a cocky grin. "Robin, this is Tom," Mom had said, beaming. "He's got a daughter, 7 years younger than you. Isn't that great?" I'd smiled politely, not sure what to say. Tom had looked me up and down in a way that made me uncomfortable, reminding me of all those boyfriends from years ago. After reliving all these memories, I knew I needed to talk to Grandpa. Jake and I drove out to my grandparents' house one weekend, the weight of Mom's demand heavy on my mind. "Grandpa," I said as we sat in their cozy living room, "Mom called me about the wedding. She wants her boyfriend Tom to walk me down the aisle. Says he wants to practice for when his own daughter gets married." Grandpa reached out and took my hand. "Robin, I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle. But if you wanted to choose Tom or anyone else, I'd understand. It's your day." I shook my head, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "There's no choice to make, Grandpa. It's always been you." Jake, sitting next to me, squeezed my other hand. "I support whatever Robin wants," he said. "She's told me about everything you've done for her, sir. I can't think of anyone better to give her away." Grandpa smiled, his eyes suspiciously moist. "Well then," he said, his voice gruff with emotion, "I guess we'd better start practicing our walk, hadn't we?" As we all laughed, I felt a wave of love and gratitude wash over me. This was my real family, the people who'd stood by me, supported me, loved me unconditionally. And in a few short weeks, I'd be adding Jake to that family officially. I thought I'd put an end to Mom's ridiculous demands, but apparently, I'd underestimated her determination. The calls kept coming, each one more insistent than the last. "Robin, you need to reconsider," Mom pleaded one evening. "Tom's really upset. If you don't let him walk you down the aisle, he might leave me." "Then maybe he's not the right guy for you," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "Look, I'm busy planning my wedding. Can we please drop this?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Mom spoke again, her voice was cold. "Fine. If that's how you want to play it, I won't come to your wedding at all." Something inside me snapped. "You know what? Fine. Don't come. It's not like you've been a real mother to me anyway." I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking. Part of me felt guilty for lashing out, but a bigger part felt relieved. Like I'd finally said what I'd been holding back for years. Days passed, and I started to think maybe that was the end of it. Maybe Mom had finally gotten the message. I threw myself into wedding planning, grateful for the distraction. But then, about a week later, I was at work when my boss, Mr. Johnson, called me into his office. As soon as I walked in, I knew something was wrong. Mom was there, mascara streaking down her face, with Tom hovering behind her like a bodyguard. "Robin," Mom cried, throwing herself at me. "How could you be so cruel to your own mother?" I stood frozen, completely blindsided. "Mom, what are you doing here?" She turned to Mr. Johnson, who was watching the scene with wide eyes. "Mr. Johnson, you have to talk some sense into her. She's breaking her poor mother's heart." Mr. Johnson stammered, clearly out of his depth. Mom barreled on, gesturing wildly between herself and Tom. "She won't let her parents walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Can you believe it? After everything we've done for her. Please, make her listen to reason." Before anyone could say anything else, Mom grabbed Tom's arm and stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. Mr. Johnson leaned back in his chair, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "Robin, I think you owe me an explanation. What exactly is going on?" Haltingly, I began to explain about my childhood, about living with my grandparents, about Mom's revolving door of boyfriends. I told him about her insistence that Tom walk me down the aisle, and my refusal. To my surprise, Mr. Johnson's face softened as I spoke. When I finished, he let out a long sigh. "You know, Robin, your mother reminds me a lot of my ex-wife," he said, shaking his head. "I divorced her because of similar, dramatic tendencies. Always making everything about her, never considering how her actions affected others." Relief washed over me. "So, you understand?" He nodded. "I do. And I want you to know that I'm on your side here. Your wedding day is about you, not your mother or her boyfriend." I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I really appreciate that." However, he continued, his tone turning serious, "We can't have scenes like this at the office. It's unprofessional and disruptive. I need you to handle this situation, Robin. Make sure it doesn't happen again." As I left Mr. Johnson's office, relief gave way to anger. How dare Mom show up at my workplace like that? She could have cost me my job. My first stop was the security desk. I explained the situation to Dave, the head of security, showing him a picture of Mom and Tom on my phone. "These two are not to be allowed in the building under any circumstances," I said firmly. "If they show up, please call the police immediately." Back at my desk, I opened my email, my fingers flying over the keyboard as I typed out a message to Mom. "Mom, your behavior today was completely unacceptable. You had no right to show up at my workplace and cause a scene. You could have jeopardized my career with your selfish actions. I've tried to be patient with you, tried to explain my feelings, but you refused to listen. So let me be crystal clear, you are no longer invited to my wedding. Neither is Tom. I'm asking you, no, I'm telling you, to stay away from me. Don't call, don't email, don't show up at my work or my home. If you can't respect my boundaries, I'll have no choice but to take legal action. Robin." I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then sat back, feeling drained but oddly liberated. That evening, I told Jake what had happened. He wrapped me in a tight hug. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that," he said. "But I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." We called my grandparents and Jake's parents, explaining the situation. To my relief, they all supported my decision. As Jake and I went through our wedding guest list that night, crossing off Mom and Tom's names, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. Our wedding would be smaller now, but it would be filled with people who truly loved and supported us. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, squeezing my hand. I looked at him, at the love and concern in his eyes, and felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. "Yeah," I said, squeezing back. "I really am. And I meant it." For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was taking control of my life, setting boundaries, and surrounding myself with people who genuinely cared about me. It wasn't how I'd imagined my wedding planning would go, but somehow, it felt right. The day I'd dreamed of for so long had finally arrived. I stood at the chapel doors, my heart fluttering with excitement. Grandpa, dapper in his tuxedo, squeezed my hand reassuringly. The music swelled, and we took our first step. But before we could even enter the chapel, a shrill voice cut through the air. "Stop right there." Mom came barreling down the aisle, Tom hot on her heels. She jabbed a finger at Grandpa. "You, move aside. Tom's walking Robin down the aisle." I couldn't believe it. After everything, she was still trying to make my wedding about her. "Mom, what are you doing here? You weren't invited. Please leave. Now." Mom's face crumpled, and the waterworks started. I'd seen this act too many times to be fooled. "How can you be so cruel? I raised you. I loved you after your father died." Grandpa, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Carol, that's enough. Everyone here knows the truth about who really raised Robin." I glanced around at our guests. Their faces showed a mix of shock, sympathy, and, was that a hint of amusement? Clearly, Mom's theatrics weren't winning her any fans. Mom must have noticed too, because her tactics suddenly changed. "Fine," she spat. "I don't need you, Robin. I have Tom. He appreciates me, unlike you. You've always been stupid and arrogant. I disown you." Before I could respond, Grandpa cut in, his voice cold. "Well, Carol, if that's how you feel, then I have something to say too. You're no longer welcome in my house, yes, my house. And I'm writing you out of my will." The change in Tom's demeanor was instant and almost comical. He paled, taking a step back from Mom. Carol. Sorry, but I didn't sign up for all this drama. Plus, without the house and inheritance, well, let's just say, I think I'd be better off finding a younger girlfriend. We're done." Mom's face contorted with rage. She let out a wordless scream, grabbing at her hair. "You're all against me. How dare you? I'll show you." Before she could finish her threat, 2 police officers who had been quietly called by one of the guests appeared at her side. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with us," one of them said firmly. As they led Mom away, her shouts echoing through the chapel, I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and oddly enough, a bit of pity. This was rock bottom for her, and part of me hoped it might finally be the wake-up call she needed. 30 minutes later, after I'd had a chance to touch up my makeup and calm my nerves, I once again stood at the chapel doors with Grandpa. As we walked down the aisle, I saw Jake waiting for me at the altar, his face full of love and concern. Our eyes met, and suddenly, all the drama of the past hour faded away. This was our moment, and nothing, not even my mother's antics, could take that away from us. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with laughter and happy tears. And as Jake and I shared our first kiss as husband and wife, I knew that whatever challenges life threw our way, we'd face them together, surrounded by the love and support of our true family. During the reception, guest after guest approached us, offering words of support and condemning my mother's behavior. "You handled that like a champ, Robin," my college roommate said, hugging me tight. "Your mom's got some nerve," Jake's uncle grumbled. "But you showed her what real class looks like." And as Jake and I drove off to start our honeymoon, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The drama with Mom was behind us now. We had a whole new life ahead of us, and I couldn't wait to see what adventures it would bring. It's been a year since the wedding, and life has settled into a new, peaceful rhythm. Jake and I live in a cozy apartment just a stone's throw from our offices. It's not huge, but it's ours, filled with love and laughter. Every morning, we walk to work together, hand in hand, talking about our plans for the future. The house where I grew up, the one Mom used to live in, now provides us with a steady stream of rental income. We've turned it into something positive, using the extra money to save for our future and occasionally splurge on weekend getaways. As for Mom, well, I hear things through the grapevine now and then. Apparently, she's renting a small apartment across town. And true to form, she's on the hunt for her next soulmate. Some things never change, I guess. I haven't spoken to her since the wedding. Sometimes I feel a twinge of guilt about that, but then I remember the years of chaos, the constant drama, the way she tried to hijack one of the most important days of my life. And I know I made the right choice. One sunny Saturday morning, as Jake and I are having breakfast on our tiny balcony, he asks, "Do you ever think about reaching out to your mom?" I take a sip of coffee, considering the question. Sometimes, I admit. But then I remember how peaceful our life is now, how drama-free. And I'm not ready to risk that. Jake nods, understanding. "You know I'll support whatever you decide, right?" I smile, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "I know. And that means everything to me." Later that day, we're walking through the park when we pass a mother and daughter having a picnic. They're laughing, heads close together, sharing some private joke. For a moment, I feel a pang of what might have been. But then I think about Grandma and Grandpa, who call every Sunday without fail. I think about Jake's parents, who have embraced me as a daughter. I think about our friends, who rallied around us during the wedding fiasco and have been our rock ever since. I realize that family isn't always about blood. It's about the people who stand by you, who support you, who love you unconditionally. And by that measure, I'm rich beyond my wildest dreams.
Hey everyone, I'm Maya, 32, living my dream as a pastry chef in the Big Apple. My bakery, Sugar Dreams, is the talk of the town. Life was sweet, I had it all. A thriving business, a dreamy fiancé named James, total lawyer hunk, and my best friend Julia by my side. Speaking of Julia, let me tell you how she became my right hand at the bakery. She'd been through the ringer at her last job, accused of theft she didn't commit. Maya, I swear, it just needed a scapegoat. And I was an easy target, she told me, her voice trembling. I trusted her completely, so I hired her as my accountant. Best decision ever, or so I thought. James and I were planning the wedding of the year, complete with a designer dress, a fancy venue, and of course, the wedding cake masterpiece I'd designed myself. Babe, whatever you want for the cake, it's yours, James said with that $1,000,000 smile. Everything was falling into place. Our wedding party was a dream team. Tom, James' best friend, was our best man. My sister Lisa was my maid of honor, and Marco, my sous chef, was an absolute wizard with a whisk. Life seemed perfect, almost. It was the little things about James that started to get to me. The way he'd get jumpy with his phone or cancel plans last minute. It's normal, I told myself. He's a busy lawyer after all. But one night at dinner, his phone kept buzzing, and he looked a bit nervous. Everything okay? I asked. Oh, yeah, just work stuff, you know how it is, he replied, flashing that smile that usually melted my worries. But I couldn't shake a growing unease. Over the next few weeks, James seemed even more distracted, always glued to his phone. Finally, I confronted him. Babe, you've been pretty attached to that phone lately. Is everything all right at work? He looked startled for a split second, then recovered with, yeah, just a big case. You know how it is. But I didn't really know, did I? The next day at the bakery, I couldn't focus, and Julia noticed. Maya, what's wrong? She asked, glancing over with concern. It's James, I admitted. He's been so distant lately. Am I crazy? Julia forced a smile. Come on, it's probably just pre-wedding jitters. You know how guys get. I wanted to believe her, but there was something off in her voice. Later that week, while James was showering, he left his phone on the counter. Curiosity got the better of me. I shouldn't have looked, but I did, and my stomach dropped. Dozens of texts from someone named S with heart emojis. When James came out, I confronted him. Who's S, James? He paused, then laughed. Oh, that's just Sam from the office. You know, the intern. She's emoji crazy. I nodded, but my gut told me something wasn't right. A few days later, I ran into Tom at a coffee shop near James' office. He seemed surprised to see me. Maya, I thought you'd be at James' business dinner tonight. My heart sank. Business dinner? He told me he was working late. Tom looked flustered. Oh, maybe I got mixed up. But I knew he'd let something slip. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. I went through James' recent credit card statements. Fancy restaurants, jewelry stores, hotel charges. None of it made sense. Just before leaving for another business trip, James handed me a small wrapped box. An early wedding gift, he said with a tight smile. As he left, I noticed Julia at her desk, looking pale and fidgety. Everything okay? I asked, but she jumped, avoiding my gaze. Fine, just not feeling great, she stammered. With trembling hands, I finally opened James' gift. Inside were divorce papers, not for me, but showing he was secretly married, to Julia. My best friend, the woman I trusted with my business and my heart. It all clicked. The hushed phone calls, the late nights, the way Julia avoided my eyes. I stormed into the bakery, my vision blurred with tears. Julia looked up and her face crumbled. Maya, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. She broke down, confessing everything. It started as a fling, but it got serious. We got married 6 months ago. I wanted to tell you, but James said it would ruin everything. My voice came out as a whisper. How could you, Julia? Tears streamed down her face, and she looked at me with guilt etched deeply in her eyes. There's more, Maya, she said, barely holding herself together. I've been stealing from the bakery. The hits just kept coming. I collapsed into a chair, my legs too weak to support me. James, He's not as well off as he pretends, she confessed. He kept asking me for money, saying he'd pay it back. But he never did, and I was scared to say no. I'm so sorry, Maya. I've betrayed you in every way possible. As Julia continued her confession, I felt like I was drowning. It wasn't just a few $100s. It was thousands, tens of thousands. My successful bakery, my dream, was on the brink of financial ruin. Just then, the bell above the door chimed, and James walked in, his face falling as he took in the scene. Maya, baby, I can explain, he stammered, trying to sound sincere. I cut him off, my voice as cold as steel. Explain what, James? How you married my best friend behind my back. How you've been stealing from me. His smooth lawyer persona slipped into place as if he could argue his way out of it. It's not what you think. Julia and I, we love each other. We didn't mean to hurt you. And the money, it was just temporary. I was going to pay it all back. I let out a hollow, bitter laugh. Love? You don't know the meaning of the word. Neither of you. Julia reached out to touch my hand. Maya, please, we can fix this somehow. I jerked my hand away. Fix this? You've destroyed everything. My trust, my business, my future. There's no fixing that. James started to plead. Baby, please, give me another chance. I'll make it right. Something inside me snapped. Another chance. Here's your chance, James. Get out. Both of you. Get out of my bakery. Get out of my life. We're done. They tried to argue, to explain, but I was done listening. I picked up the phone and called the one person I knew I could trust. Lisa, I need you now. My sister arrived in record time. She took in the scene with wide eyes, then pulled me into her arms as I finally broke down. Taking charge, she ushered James and Julia out with a stream of language that, under any other circumstances, would have made me laugh. Over the next few hours, Lisa and I pieced together the full extent of the betrayal. The theft had left Sugar Dreams in dire straits, bills unpaid, suppliers demanding payment, and barely enough in the account to make payroll. What am I going to do, Lisa? I sobbed. The bakery was my dream. And now? Lisa squeezed my hand. We'll figure it out, sis. You're not alone in this. As the shock began to wear off, a steely determination took its place. James and Julia had taken so much from me, but they hadn't taken my skills, my passion, or my fighting spirit. No, I said, wiping my eyes, they don't get to win. I'm going to save my bakery, and I'm going to do it without them. Lisa smiled, fierce pride lighting her eyes. That's my girl. Where do we start? I took a deep breath, looking around at my beloved Sugar Dreams. It was going to be a long, hard road ahead, but I'd built this place from nothing once before. I could do it again. We start, I said, rolling up my sleeves, by making the best damn cupcakes this city has ever seen. The next few months were a whirlwind. Saving Sugar Dreams became my mission, my obsession. I practically lived at the bakery, working side by side with Marco to keep us afloat. We need to cut costs wherever we can, I told Marco one late night, but we can't compromise on quality. He nodded, a determined look on his face. I've got ideas for new recipes, unique flavors, but with more affordable ingredients. Trust me, they'll be amazing. And he was right. Marco's creativity paired with my business sense became our secret weapon. We introduced a line of Dreamcatcher cupcakes with exotic flavors that caught people's attention without breaking the bank. But it wasn't enough. We needed more customers, fast. That's when Lisa suggested something crazy. Sis, you need to tell your story. People love a comeback. At first, I balked. You want me to air my dirty laundry on social media? Not the dirty details, Lisa explained with a grin. Just the basics. Local baker betrayed, fighting to save her dream. People will eat it up. Pun intended. Reluctantly, I agreed. We started a campaign called #SweetRevenge, where I shared snippets of my journey, focusing on resilience and the joy of baking. To my surprise, it took off. One day, a customer came in, eyes wide with excitement. Are you the #SweetRevenge baker? Your story is incredible. Word spread, and lines began to form. Sugar Dreams was becoming the talk of the town again, this time for all the right reasons. Meanwhile, I heard through the grapevine that James's law firm had uncovered some of his shady dealings. It turned out Julia and I weren't his only victims. James has been disbarred, Tom told me one day when he stopped by for coffee. The firm's in shambles, and he's facing serious legal trouble. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a twinge of satisfaction, but mostly, I felt relieved that James couldn't hurt anyone else. As for Julia, her role in the whole mess became public knowledge. Last I heard, she couldn't get an accounting job anywhere in the city, and even her friends had abandoned her. Months passed, and slowly but surely, Sugar Dreams climbed out of the red. Every paid bill, every new customer, felt like a personal victory. One year, to the day after I discovered James's betrayal, I stood in my bustling bakery, the air thick with the scent of fresh pastries and the hum of happy chatter. Marco appeared at my side, grinning. "We did it, boss. We really did it." I smiled back, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the ovens. "We sure did." Just then, the bell above the door chimed, and I looked up to see a familiar face. James. He looked terrible, his designer suit replaced by worn clothes, his confident swagger gone. Our eyes met, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I thought I'd loved. But then he turned and fled, the bell jangling behind him. I could have felt angry or sad, but instead, I felt free. Turning back to the bakery, my bakery, I picked up a piping bag. There were cupcakes to frost, customers to serve, and a sweet, successful future ahead. And it was all mine. And now, I have a question for you. If you were in Maya's shoes, would you have given James or Julia a second chance? Or do you think cutting ties completely was the right move? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Hey there, I'm Amelia. I'm 28 and absolutely crushing it in the marketing world here in the Big Apple. I just scored a promotion to senior executive, and life is looking pretty fantastic. My fiancé John is a sharp, ambitious lawyer, and together we're the power couple of our friend group. Now let's get into my family situation. My dad, also named John, has always been my rock. We're as close as they come, but then there's my stepmom, Karen, who's a piece of work, and my stepsister, Hazel. Well, she's a whole other story. Amelia, honey, have you thought about inviting Hazel to your engagement party? Dad's voice crackles through the phone. I sigh. Dad, you remember what happened at my graduation? He chuckles. I know, sweetheart, but she's family. Thinking back to when Dad and Karen got married, I remember Hazel making high school villains look like saints, always pulling stunts for attention, always competing with me. Fine, Dad, I'll invite her. But if she shows up in a white dress, I'm not responsible for my actions. He laughs, relief evident in his tone. After hanging up, I flop onto my couch, thoughts racing. Despite everything, I've always tried to keep things civil with Hazel. My phone buzzes. It's my best friend, Rachel. Girl, you will not believe what I just heard about Hazel, she says. Do I even want to know? I groan. Apparently she's telling everyone she's shortlisted for a Nobel Prize. I can't help but laugh. For what? Best drama queen. Rachel laughs with me. So, are you really inviting her to the engagement party? I sigh. Yeah, keeping the peace, you know. The night of the engagement party finally arrives. The restaurant hums with excitement, laughter filling the air. John wraps his arm around my waist as we greet guests. You look stunning, babe, he whispers, his eyes shining. I'm about to respond when I spot Hazel entering. She looks unusually pale, leaning on Dad for support. Amelia, darling, she calls out weakly. I didn't want to miss this. The night unfolds, but I can't shake the feeling something's off. Finally, it's time for the toast. Just as I raise my glass, there's a loud crash. Hazel has collapsed. Glass shatters as guests gasp. Dad shouts for an ambulance, cradling Hazel's head. When she finally regains consciousness, her eyes fill with tears. I didn't want to ruin your night, she says softly. But I can't keep it a secret anymore. I'm dying. The room falls silent, the air heavy with shock. In the days that follow, Hazel's condition is all anyone talks about. I find myself spending more time with her, torn by guilt as she confides her fears. I'll never know what it's like to fall in love, to get married, she sobs one night. Meanwhile, my time with John dwindles. Babe, we haven't had a date night in weeks, he points out gently one evening. I sigh, already reaching for my coat. I know I'm sorry, but Hazel needs me. You understand, right? Weeks pass, and Hazel's requests grow bolder. She wants to be involved in every part of the wedding planning, constantly changing details we've already finalized. One night, she invites me over for dinner, saying she has something important to discuss. As I take a sip of water, she reaches across the table, grasping my hand. Amelia, seeing you and John together has made me realize what I'm missing. I know it's a huge favor, but I want to know what real love feels like before it's too late. I blink, stunned. What do you mean? She takes a shaky breath. Could you let me date John? Just for a little while, to experience love before I go. I nearly choke on my water. Hazel, that's insane. John and I are engaged. We're in love. She bursts into tears, and I'm left speechless, wondering how we got here.
I know, and I'm so happy for you, Hazel sobbed, her voice trembling. But Amelia, please, I'm never going to have that. Can't you let me just have a taste of it? As I sat there watching her tear-streaked face, a mix of anger, pity, and disbelief coursed through me. How could she ask this? And more importantly, how could I possibly respond? I can't believe I'm doing this, I muttered, my hands shaking as I dialed John's number. Each ring felt like an eternity. Hey, babe, what's up? He answered, cheerful as always. I took a deep breath. John, we need to talk. Can you come over? An hour later, he was on my couch, his expression puzzled. You're breaking up with me? Amelia, I don't understand. I couldn't bring myself to meet his gaze. It's Hazel. She's dying, John. Her last wish is to experience love with you. His face twisted in shock. What? That's insane. I love you, Amelia. I'm not going to. Please, John, I interrupted, my voice cracking. Do this for me, for her. She doesn't have much time left. He was hurt, angry, and confused, but eventually he agreed. As he left, it felt like my heart had been ripped out. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I buried myself in work, staying late, taking on extra projects, anything to keep my mind off John and Hazel. But I couldn't escape it. Each time I opened social media, there was another picture of Hazel and John. At a restaurant, the beach, a concert, and in every photo, she looked healthier. This doesn't make sense, I muttered, scrolling through her Instagram. Wasn't she on death's door a month ago? Rachel, my best friend, voiced what I'd been afraid to admit. Amelia, have you actually seen any medical reports? You don't think she'd lie about something like that, do you? I brushed her off. Come on, Rach. Hazel wouldn't do that. But her words planted a seed of doubt. I started noticing things. Hazel no longer mentioned doctor's appointments, and suddenly she was eating all the foods she once claimed she couldn't. My suspicions were building, but I couldn't let myself believe it, until the night that changed everything. I was dropping off some old photos at Dad's house when I heard Hazel's voice in the kitchen. Mom, you should see Amelia's face every time she sees me with John. It's priceless. I froze, pressing myself against the wall. Hazel, don't you think this has gone on long enough? Karen's voice sounded tired, exasperated. The girl gave up her fiancé for you. Isn't that enough? Hazel's laugh was cold, a sound I'd never heard from her before. Are you kidding? This is just the beginning. By the time I'm done, I'll have everything Amelia ever wanted. The job, the man, the life. And the best part? She handed it all to me on a silver platter. And your illness? Karen pressed. Please, as if I'd actually make myself sick. It was all an act, and Amelia fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. My world spun. I felt sick, betrayed, furious. Hazel had been playing me, manipulating all of us. Rage propelled me forward as I stormed into the kitchen, phone in hand, recording. Karen followed, wide-eyed and silent. Hazel's expression shifted into fake innocence the moment she saw me. Amelia, what's going on? Cut the crap, Hazel. I heard everything. Her face dropped for a split second before she regained her composure. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? I shot back. So you didn't fake a terminal illness to steal my fiancé? Karen tried to interject. Amelia, let's not be hasty. Shut up, Karen. I snapped. I heard you too. You knew the whole time. Hazel's mask cracked and she sneered. Fine, you want the truth? Yes, I faked it. And you know what? It was almost too easy. Poor, gullible Amelia, always doing the right thing. I felt like I was going to be sick. Why, Hazel? Why would you do this to me? Because you always had everything, she spat. The loving dad, the perfect career, the amazing fiancé. I wanted that. I deserved that. I shook my head in disgust. You're pathetic, both of you. I turned to leave, but Hazel grabbed my arm. You can't tell anyone. You'll ruin everything.
I yank my arm free, meeting her gaze with steely resolve. Watch me. The next few hours are a whirlwind. First, I show the recording to my dad. He's devastated, angry, and shocked. I can't believe this, he mutters, his head in his hands. My own wife, my stepdaughter. Then comes the hardest part, calling John. He answers immediately. Amelia, what's wrong? John, I need you to listen carefully. I play him the recording. After it ends, there's a long, heavy silence. Oh my God, he finally says. Amelia, I'm so sorry. I never should have. Save it, John. Just save it. Next, I do something I never thought I'd do. I post the recording on social media, tagging Hazel, Karen, and everyone who needs to know the truth. The fallout is immediate. My phone blows up with messages. Hazel's boss calls her, furious over the deception. Karen's friends start unfriending her, and whispers follow her everywhere she goes. In the midst of the chaos, John shows up at my door. Amelia, please. I was an idiot. I love you. Can we start over? I look at him, this man I once thought I'd spend my life with. No, John, we can't. You left me so easily. That's not love. Days pass. My dad files for divorce. Hazel loses her job. Karen can't step out in public without facing people's judgment. Then my boss calls me into her office. I brace for bad news, but instead she smiles. Amelia, we're impressed with how you handled this situation. We'd like to offer you a promotion. It's in our London office. I'm stunned. London? She nods. A fresh start. What do you say? A month later, I'm boarding a plane to London. As I settle into my seat, I reflect on everything that's happened. Yes, I lost my fiancé. Yes, I went through hell. But I also learned who my real friends are and how strong I can be. Now I'm off to start a new chapter, free from toxic people and full of possibilities. As the plane takes off, I smile to myself. Hazel and Karen are back in New York, desperately trying to salvage their reputations while I'm soaring toward a brand new life. They say living well is the best revenge. Well, watch me live my best life, one that Hazel could never fake. The story ends here, folks. Now, I've got a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you have given your fiancé to your dying stepsister? Or would you have seen through the lie from the start? It's a tough call, right? On one hand, compassion. On the other, suspicion. What would you have done differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.